Hey guys, welcome back to First and 10 over here on Clueless Gamers. I'm your host Pete, joined as always by my co-host Brian in just a sec. Guys, we're back here, week 2, as promised. We're here to talk about all of the analysis of week 1, particularly focusing on 3 games that we're going to pick out, maybe more if we have some time. And then we're, of course, going to give our week 2 picks, as we always do our NFL weekly picks right at the end of the show. Everyone that stopped by last week and joined us for our opening episode of the 2024-25 NFL season, where we had guest Calibro, shout out to him. We appreciate him coming on. So everyone that watched that and liked it and all that stuff, we greatly appreciate all of you. Brian, we're back in the full swing, man. We have a week down in the NFL. We don't have a full grasp, obviously, about what these teams are made up of. But now we have a little bit of information more than we went into week 1 with, because we've seen actual NFL football take place. Brian, how you doing, man? And welcome back into the show.
Yeah, very good. Week 1 is always a bit unpredictable. There were some scores that you looked at early in that 1 o'clock window and you went, what? Huh? Who? There were like 3 games. There was like the Bears are down 13-0, and I'm feeling good about my lack of Bears hype. Of course, they rally to win. Miami goes down like 14-0 against Jacksonville early. The Falcons were kind of laying an egg and ended up losing. And how about the Patriots going into
How about those
Cincinnati and
Patriots?
beating the Bengals 16-10 the final? So there were some scores early that was like, wow, this is surprising, but a lot of telling scores. And like you said, of course, you can't take too much out of week 1. There's always a general overreaction after week 1, but certain teams like the Giants, forget about it. There's no season there. It's good night after one game. I just don't see how there's any way that team can be competitive after what we saw in week 1. But a lot to get to, and let's get rolling.
Yeah, I'm excited to kick it off. And of course, last time we recorded on the opening night of the season, Ravens Chiefs, but we recorded before the game. Now, let's talk about the game and all of the stuff that kind of blew up there last week. Brian, we go in to Arrowhead, man. The 2-time defending champs, trying to go for the first ever three-peat in the NFL history in the modern Super Bowl era. Of course, the Packers did it before there was the Super Bowls there. But in the modern era, we've never seen this before, and the Chiefs kicked it off, bringing in the opponent that they beat, that they were underdogs against on the road last year in the AFC Championship in the Baltimore Ravens. And man, what a hell of a game this was to kick off the season. I think it had a little bit of everything, from great plays to a little bit of head-scratching mistakes, refs being involved, all the fun that you bring into an NFL game, especially in prime time. And it came down right at the end, basically an inch, a toe is really what,
Yeah.
I won't say straight up the side of the game, because they still would have needed a 2-point conversion to actually win it. But to get the potential win, or maybe they would have changed their mind and went for the tie, it was right there within a toe length of Isaiah Likely, the Ravens tight end, really the starting tight end, it felt like, on opening night, who had a hell of a night, just missing potentially tying or winning that game against the Chiefs. It was a lot of fun. Brian, what was your main takeaways from what you saw in the opening night of the NFL season?
Yeah, I think there were a few. I mean, you start with the Chiefs side, and I think it's pretty clear this team's going to be better on offense than they were a year ago. They got a lot more speed, a lot more of a dynamic quality in that offense that was lacking for so much last year. And right off the bat, we saw it with the rookie addition, Xavier Worthy. He was impressive. Only limited touches. I think he only touched the ball 3 times, but 2 of them went for scores.
He's
And boy,
lightning,
does
man.
he have speed to burn. I mean, that is just a perfect fit in that kind of offense. I think he's going to be a difference maker all season long. Going to be able to run the ball solidly with Pacheco, who is he just runs angry when
He
you watch him.
does.
He just runs with
He runs a
purpose,
little
and
goofy.
he's a little goofy. It's a good way to put it, but I think that's really my big takeaway is that the Chiefs are going to be more dangerous on the offensive side of the ball. They didn't even have Hollywood Brown, who, by the way, is a pretty good weapon that they're going to have. He gets right from injury. And, a fairly off game from Travis Kelce. Didn't really do too much, but Mahomes, it wasn't anything earth shattering, but it was very efficient. I mean, he did have the one interception, but he managed the game well. He made the plays he had to. Worthy, as I said, stepped up in a big way, and it's kind of what we expected from the Chiefs. You're not going to keep them down for too long, and after all, they still won the Super Bowl in a year where it didn't seem like they
I
played
know.
their best. So we know they're going to be formidable. But on the Ravens, while I didn't think it was their best game, I thought like by the end, to me, the message was sent that this team can play with the Chiefs. I mean, like you said, they're right there. It comes down to a toe at the end. We don't know if they're going to win, and I would have been surprised if they went for two there. I would have played for the tie. I think that's a little too aggressive there from Harbaugh. But in a game where Lamar didn't have a great passing day, I mean, boy, did he run the football. I
Yeah,
mean, he looked
he
like
was
a
great.
different animal running. They talked a lot on the broadcast about how he slimmed down and lost weight, and he just looked lighter on his feet and even more dangerous with the ball in his hands.
Yep.
The Ravens are going to have to find a way to get more productivity in that passing game. I think if they do that, they're going to be very dangerous. And even so, this was a game that to me, they stamped the fact that they can play toe to toe, quite literally, with the Chiefs as it came down that close. So it was a very good opening game all the way around.
Yeah, it was a great opening game. I think I took away a little bit different of perspective. If I'm a Ravens player, sure, a rallying cry could be the way you described it, of like, hey, we're a toe away, we're right there, way better performance in the AFC Championship. I believe if we see this team in the playoffs, which they most likely will, we can beat this team. I took it from a different perspective of, man, how many times is Mahomes going to beat Lamar here? Lamar's only won this one time. Remember, that was the famous play where they won by, I think, like 1 point. And, Harbaugh goes, what do you want to do, Lamar? And he says, let's go for it. And they go for it on like 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. I think that game was in Baltimore, and they sealed the deal, won the game. I just question, can this team, and I know this feels like it's a question the entire league could be asked when they're facing the Chiefs, but particularly for the Ravens and the Bills, like, can these two teams get over this hump of beating Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? And I have to question, I don't know, Bri. Like, I really don't know if they're able to do that. We talked a little bit last time about kind of the weird interview that Lamar gave before the season started, saying F throwing the ball and all that stuff. And he very much seemed like he was kind of doing that. Yeah, he threw for 273 yards, but a lot of short passes. You had the play that was kind of a little bit broken slash a great play by Likely that ended up in the third quarter going for that huge touchdown. But for the most part, Lamar was pretty underneath. He wasn't really driving the ball down the field, and he seemed committed to making a point to running the ball. What do you end up having this one? 16 carries for 122 yards. I
Yeah.
don't think that's a sustainable formula as the season progresses, of someone who has been nicked up by injury. And even still, if he's losing weight, he's not good. He's not the biggest guy. We even seen Josh Allen this past weekend get hurt running the ball. It's just not a sustainable method to protect yourself. And that's what I wonder if this team could play well. You could argue they're the second, I would definitely say, a top 3 team in the NFL right now after week 1. But can they beat this kind of giant, this juggernaut in the Chiefs? I don't know if they're able to do it, Bri. I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's still an open question, and like you said, a lot of teams are asking that. The answer may be never. I mean,
Yeah,
the Chiefs may prove to be behemoth that wins,
it's crazy.
5 Super Bowls or more, and everyone else is left on the outside looking in. But I thought overall, like, it was a decent enough performance. Still room to get a lot better, of course, and get more productivity in the passing game. They really need Zay Flowers to be that go-to guy down the field. He didn't have a great game. Didn't get much out of the other receivers, Rashad Bateman, even Mark Andrews, like a very quiet game,
He was out there
likely
playing
kind of.
left tackle or whatever the hell he was doing in a couple of those plays. I was like, what is going on?
Oh, yeah, and by the way, while we're talking about this game, I think there may have just been another whistle and a foul for illegal formation on Ronnie Stanley.
Yeah, it was a rough night. I mean, the league is clearly making a point on the illegal formation stuff. We've seen these calls in the past. It's always been an actual penalty, but they are making a point to crack down on this. I just felt in their opening night, And really, in those first two primetime games, I thought the rest were very uneven. The calls were all over the place, as it feels like they always are every season. But when you have all eyes on a standalone game like you had this game or the Friday game in Brazil, you have to have a little more consistency. And I felt like, we had very much the same. It felt like last season, right? Of Jawan Taylor, the Chiefs' right tackle. I felt he was constantly false starting and getting it early and was almost never called on it. So it depends on who gets called, what's being seen, how the game's going. I just think there was a lot of inconsistency that hopefully that kind of peters its way out as the season goes on. Because we saw, it was something like, what was it, 22 or something illegal formations in week one that were called, something like that across the league. Like, that's far too many. There has to be a little bit of a correction. There's too much of an overcorrection, and hopefully we'll see that going forward. But overall, I thought it was a solid game. I really think it was the emergence we saw. People like me and you, there's people out there, obviously, in fantasy that were like, hey, this Isaiah Likely guy, he might be worth a pick. He's pretty good. I think we saw his talent on full display. And I don't think that diminishes Mark Andrew in a way, but they could a lot more here this season run a very two tight end centric offense here. I think that could be a fascinating element of what the Ravens can do.
Definitely, and getting the running game going, getting Henry more integrated into the mix. We saw him have a touchdown in the first game. Outside of that, didn't have a lot of difference-making runs, but they're also trying to adjust to new personnel on the offensive line. I think they have 3 new starters, so the offense is a little bit of a work in progress.
Yeah, Mahomes also got lucky at the end where, he throws the ball up, kind of trying to win the game, kill the clock there at the end, and the ball gets tipped up in the air, and it should have been intercepted, but it just feels like the Chiefs are the Patriots now, right? Where everything seems to go their way these days. And, of course, Mahomes makes an athletic play, jumps up, catches his own tip ball, and goes down, and they punt it, and then the Ravens had that drive where they almost won it. So there's just moments like that where I feel like if we're watching the Jets or we're watching the Rams or one of these other teams, that's a pick six and the game's tied right there. It just feels like right now in the Chiefs' era, which is what this is, it feels like even the little things like that, even those mistakes or those good plays by a Ravens defensive lineman, they just go the Chiefs' way. So, hey, hats off to them. It was banner night. They dropped the banner. They get the win at home. They beat another arch rival yet again, and they're off and running here. Going into another arch rival here starting week 2. So, let's say the NFL did give them a difficult schedule to start. So, it's not like they're getting cupcakes out here, and the Chiefs are proving up to the task. Well, Bri, the games we selected, when you and I talked before we went on, we kind of this week, we don't always do this, ladies and gentlemen, but this week we kind of just did all the primetime games in some ways. We're going to skip down all the way to Sunday Night Football, and we're going to go to Detroit. We're going to go to Rams and the Lions. If you've never watched this before and you're not looking at my hat, I'm a huge LA Rams fan. It was a disappointing night, of course, the Rams going down 26-20 on Sunday Night Football. Bri, all around this game was tough to swallow. I didn't expect, me, you, and Cal last week, we all picked the Lions. I expected it to be a little bit more of a lead, a little bit more of a quote-unquote blowout. I believe I said somewhere in the range of 34-20, given all of the injuries that the Rams had coming in. And boy, did they, A, play well, and at the same time, they got even more injured in this game than they went into if we didn't even think that was possible. So
Right.
I'm not sounding the alarm bells, Bri. I don't think the season's over by any stretch, but man, we're starting to approach 2022 territory. And if you're a Ram fan out there or you're a big football fan, you know what that season was like. The Rams ended up going 5-12 that season. Their offensive line was absolutely decimated. Even Stafford was hurt for half the season. And by the end, we were starting Baker Mayfield. So that's kind of how that season went. It very much feels like we're not there yet, but we're getting to a point where, all right, this Arizona game, when we get to our picks, is huge. This is a huge game, way more than any game against the Rams, who dominate the Cardinals usually. This is a huge game given where they are. We know this week Puka got hurt in this game. He's on the IR. He'll be out for at least 4 weeks. Looks like a PCL sprain, so he avoided any major injuries, but kind of a lingering thing he had going on from the joint practices back in training camp. It kind of resurfaced here. We also had Steve Avila, kind of the Rams' star offensive lineman, left guard. He was playing a little bit of center this year. He was the rookie last year, played every single game last year. He's on IR. He went down with an injury, a knee injury in this game. They lost backup left tackle Joseph Noteboom. He went on the IR with an ankle injury in this game. And by the end of it, you're starting this guy named Ankari, who I had never heard of in my life, who's a third-string left tackle because, of course, starting left tackle Alaric Jackson is suspended for the first 2 games for some PED stuff that they caught him having. So it was an overall mess. By the end of the night, the only starting offensive lineman that was out there and healthy was Jonah Jackson, coincidentally used to be a Detroit Lion. We also lost Kevin Dotson at the end of it. He was in a walking boot, the right guard by the end of it. And Rob Havenstein, the right tackle, missed the game as well. And he didn't start, and they had Walter McClendon starting at right tackle. So we know what this team is pretty simply. When they can't protect Stafford, who's not the most mobile quarterback, he's the second oldest quarterback in the league, they're bad. And when they can protect him, they're pretty damn good. And I thought, before I turn it over to you, Bry, so forgive me for going a little long, I thought Stafford, for the most part, was excellent. I thought he played great, given all the circumstances he had in Detroit, all the emotion, a pretty great team, a team that I picked as a number 1 seed that I believe that they're going to be this year. And to do that with really him and Cooper Kupp. I mean, because they didn't really have a run game going. They couldn't get that going. The passes had to be quick and out. They couldn't really protect. You're relying on a lot of second, third, and fourth stringers all over the place. And, man, that felt like 2021 vintage Stafford to Kupp. And right at the end of the game, Bri, they are this close to completing a pass that probably would have iced the game, and we'd be talking a whole different story here. So, yeah, so those are my kind of my thoughts of how that game went, at least on the surface level. Bri, what did you think of Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, there was a lot there with the injuries, and we have that much to deal with on the offensive line. I mean, that it's just hard to win when you're in that kind of a situation on the line. Like you said, on your third string left tackle, and even with all of that, as that second half was progressing, Stafford really got into a good rhythm. He was completing passes. They were moving the ball. Like you said, it looked like it was 2021 when Kupp had the just tremendous season. Yeah, and I mean, I think he tied a career high with 14 catches in this game.
Yeah,
so,
he was incredible.
And frankly, they need that now with Puka on the sidelines. They need Kupp to be the guy, and it really just looks like the last couple of years that he was a guy who was just hampered by his injuries, and now he's healthy, and he could have another one of those huge seasons. And I'll just say, as an aside, that's good for one of my fantasy teams because I picked him. So I'm liking the 14
I had Puka
catches.
on another team,
but,
so I'm doing the opposite of you.
Yeah, and Puka was going first round in a lot of drafts.
Yeah.
And now he's going to be on the shelf there for at least 4 games. So tough game. I mean, but like you said, the Rams are right there. They had a chance to win it. They were down there at the goal line late, and you probably remember the sequence where they had an end around that would have been a touchdown. It got called back on a holding penalty.
Yeah,
they later got another foul on a pass to the end zone, had to settle for a field goal. If they scored a touchdown there, they might win the game.
Yeah.
But instead, it just wasn't quite enough because the Lions, when they get that running game going, and David Montgomery continues to be a very important factor in that offense. As much as fantasy owners and fans alike want Gibbs to just explode, Montgomery is that guy that they're comfortable giving the rock to, and he's the one who came up with the game-winning score. So Lions look formidable. I mean, this was a game where St. Brown was basically invisible. He had 3 catches for 13 yards, and even with that, the running game led by Montgomery did well to give the Lions the win here.
Yeah, shout out to Chris Shula, the new defensive coordinator there over in Los Angeles. I thought he had a great game plan against a high-powered offense. Shout out Tre'Davious White, coming off a major injury, the former Bill. We know he used to be an all-pro. Really, he wasn't on him the entire time, but he was on him a good amount of the time. Really shutting down St. Brown here. I thought it was an excellent job there. Of course, on the flip side of it, on a lot of, easy, simple crossing routes, being able to use his speed. We saw Williams break out in this game. I think he had something like 116 yards or something like that. So that was kind of like, it's a give and take, right? You can't stop everyone on this Lions offense, but relatively, I thought they played really well defensively. I think by the end of the game, you could clearly see when it got to overtime, they were gassed. And Campbell and the Lions knew it, and that's why they hadn't really used Montgomery in that way all game. And they just went right at their throat, right at them, and the Rams couldn't stop them. The play that you were referencing was actually that left tackle in Kari. It was a touchdown to Jordan Whittington, which is the rookie that they really like him in camp as well. And that ends up calling back in the sequence. I literally have it right here. You get 2nd and 11 after that. Kyron goes for 3 yards rushing. Stafford throws an incomplete pass to Kupp. They settle for a field goal. And you're talking there. That's right in the third in the fourth quarter. So you're talking right at the beginning of the fourth quarter. You could have a huge touchdown. That's a 4-point swing. It's a 4-point swing literally right there. That's not one of these things where it's like, oh, well, they got stopped at the 20-yard line and they looked like they were going in for a touchdown. They were literally in. They scored. And that left tackle, who didn't even have to hold in that case to spring the touchdown. It wasn't like one of those situations where, the holding made the touchdown possible. He was in. It wasn't even needed. It really killed them. And, we see as the game went on, of course, ends up being a 6-point game because of the touchdown in overtime. It was a 3-point game late in that fourth quarter when the Lions tie it up and send it to overtime. There's your 4 points right there. Game's over. And hell, maybe we're winning a close game just like they won the playoff game earlier this season. I just felt like it came down to the Rams situationally. They had very much like the Rams-Lions playoff game. They're in the red zone, and they're settling for field goals. And they're either not doing enough or they're making mistakes. And it just can't happen against great teams. And the Lions took advantage. I thought overall, I will say, I want to get your thoughts on it. I thought from the Lions' perspective, I didn't think they looked good at all, especially offensively.
Yeah.
I think they were definitely rusty. I think, there's no Aaron Donald out there. The Rams secondary, as I said last week, is completely beaten up as well. There's injuries all over the place. They trade out Ernest Jones, who was their signal caller in the middle of that defense. There was a lot of reasons to think that the Lions were going to really handle business here. I thought Goff was bad. I thought there was 2 more picks he easily could have had. There was one that was kind of skipped forward that could have been made. And then right at the end of the game, you want to talk about game-changing plays. Kobe Durant has the ball in his hand, and as he's going to the ground, kind of the ground dislodges it. He makes that pick. The Rams have the ball on the Lions side of the field, on the other side of the 50-yard line. Now, think about where they're trying to salt the game away. They're in Lions territory with the potential to maybe score another field goal, not inside the 10-yard line where they were punted. So it's moments like that the Lions were very fortunate that they got away with it. I thought Goff was very scatterbrained. I did not think he played well. He looked kind of a little bit like Goff can get, a little bit skittish. And in the end, they got bailed out because that run game and Montgomery and Gibbs, they took over. And, hey, hats off to the Lions. They got out of there with a win.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of their big guns really didn't perform. I mean, we talked about quiet game from St. Brown, the big tight end, Sam Laporta, had a very pedestrian game. So I think Duff will have much better games to come. We saw a lot of kind of, I don't want to say uninspired football, but week 1 doesn't seem to have the best product because most starters aren't playing in preseason. They're not practicing. It takes a little while to get into the groove of the season, and week 1 tends to not be the best show, if you will, for most games.
No, absolutely. And Williams, I fact-checked myself. Williams had 21 yards, so I was 5 yards off there. But overall, great game. I mean, all the primetime games I felt were entertaining for the most part, before we talk about the game that we're going to talk about in a second. But it's hard as a Rams fan to be encouraged after this, given just all the injuries, and just getting out of here with a win would have just been, it's so much more meaningful in this case to the Rams than it is the Lions, given the health issue. And now you start an uphill battle, right? So you got to see how it turns out. I know there was Lions fans being just as obnoxious as they were after the wild card game. So shout out to any of you if you're watching this. I don't engage in that kind of activity. I don't think there's a need to. I think we're both good teams. I think the Lions are clearly better than the Rams. But a lot of the stuff that they talk about, I think, is it's really funny. It's really funny given how bad I think they performed against a third-string team for the most part that was out there, and to have to go to overtime at home in week 1, not really something you should be proud of. That's all I'm saying there. But yeah, overall, great game, really fun to watch, and excited to see more. It's a nice little rivalry that these two teams are kind of building up over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Brian, the final game that we could talk about before we switch to picks here is one you requested. I wasn't going to say nothing. We'll go to the Monday night game, the other primetime aforementioned game that I just said. The Jets, the New York Jets, visit the San Francisco 49ers. One of the toughest games that you could have to open a season for any opponent that is playing the 49ers. I think that's fair to say. Aaron Rodgers, the second time of a much anticipated opening game for him in a Jets uniform. Of course, everybody knows the story from last year. And overall, Bri, I mean, I'll swing it to you here. I'll just say the Niners, they win this one 32-19. Of course, the touchdown there, 6 of those points were just garbage time points at the end of the game from backup quarterback of the Jets, Tyrod Taylor. I thought the Jets they played uninspired. I think they got bullied. I think they looked bad. But they also kind of looked like you and me thought they would. Not just against the Niners, but, you're a Jets fan. And full transparency, go back to the prediction show, neither of us have them in the playoffs. And I think I understand the level of competition of the opponent they're playing. I fully understand that. But you're going to have to beat teams like that if you want to go to the playoffs and win games in the playoffs. And this is what I'm concerned about, Bri. I'll swing it to you. I won't say any more. What'd you think of your Jets on opening night?
Well, you have to start with just the fact that fans have their expectations too high. That's the bottom line. And for anyone to look at this team coming into the season and say it was a Super Bowl contender is just far
Rodgers
beyond.
said it there. Rodgers said it there, right?
I just like you said, you and I were kind of on the same page here. I mean, you're going against one of the best teams in the league. Like, I just didn't have a good feeling in this game and really the season going in because it's not a franchise that has proven to be a stable winner.
Yeah.
So you want to see it before you actually predict it. And that was kind of my thing here. But with this game in particular, I mean, look, we go in and you expect this vaunted defense is going to be up to snuff, and they got shredded in this game.
Destroyed.
I mean, you can go to the offense. The offense had its ups and downs. There were moments where you watched and said, this is a functional offense. I mean, particularly that drive they had in the first quarter where everybody's doing cartwheels and calling it like the best drive they've had in 20 years. And it was a thing of beauty, but it was the only drive they basically had the whole game. I know later, more in garbage time, Rodgers connected with Lazard on that touchdown. But overall, the offense didn't do much outside of that drive. Defense, though, and I get it, they're going against great playmakers, but for the game, you hear McCaffrey is a surprise inactive, and I almost thought, wow, everything's coming up Jets here. They don't have to deal with McCaffrey. Instead, you get a running back that nobody's heard of goes out there, Jordan Mason. Every time they give him the rock, he's just exploding, goes for 150 yards, whatever it may have been.
147.
I mean, it was just not a good performance by this defense. They did not resemble a defense that could be elite. Now, I would think they'll have better games going forward, but this was not a good first impression across the board. I will say, like, from Rodgers' standpoint, I saw enough, and the numbers weren't great. If you look at them, it's like 13 of 21 for under 200 yards. Yeah. I saw enough that I feel like he will be able to hold up his side. There were times where he looked good. He had good zip on the ball. I was actually impressed different points watching him. This defense is going to have to get it together. And I just, like I said in our show with Calibro, the coaching is a big concern. And Sala just doesn't seem to have the answers. He just goes out there at his press conference like, we'll bounce back next week. That's very hollow words. Like, you got to give me something on what your plan is here, and just, oh yeah, we'll be fine. Not worried about the offense, not worried about the defense. After what you saw in your first game, you better be worried. Yeah. I mean, I don't care that you're playing a team in Tennessee. They'll beat you if you're not careful. Any team can beat you in this league. So they got a long way to go, and the issues presented themselves very much in the first go-round.
Yeah, I think the way that I saw Rodgers was a little bit different. I'm glad he made it through the game. I think there's a possibility that he could play the whole season. The offensive line didn't look bad. All that's fine. Rodgers is clearly not what he was. I think we knew that. And I think that was confirmed going out there. Now, of course, he'll get better as the season goes on and he goes against easier opponents, sure. But, Brian, there's a legitimate concern. I mean, the guy hasn't thrown a 300-yard game since, I think, like 2021, his last MVP season. He's had a number of games now that he's not even thrown for 250 yards. In this game, like, you could see it just with the eye test. He's what you would expect. He's a 40-year-old quarterback, going to be 41 in December, coming off major Achilles surgery. He looks stiff. He couldn't move in the pocket like we're used to him moving, which is kind of what we expect, but it's kind of, he's not a Brady, right? Like his game relies on a little bit of mobility. That's gone, Bri. And I think the more concerning thing was, you look at, this was a popular thing on Twitter, but you could definitely look it up, and it does regard something to bring up. His throws chart, all of his passes were to the left of him. He did not throw and complete a single pass to the right side. And I think that more has to do with, how comfortable is he, putting pressure, turning his body, moving to the right side. And that also leaves a lot of predictability that defenses, I'm telling you, Tennessee's defense is going to look at that going into this game that they're going to play on Sunday. I just think there was a lot more concerning things there. Yeah, he had zip. He could throw the ball. He could do all that. I didn't think he wouldn't be able to do that. I wasn't concerned about that. I didn't think, this is not like he had like a Peyton Manning situation where he had neck spinal fusion surgery where I'm like, is that nerve work? Can he throw the ball? I had no question of that. It's more, can he push the ball downfield? Can he have a little bit of mobility? He did neither. There was no reason to believe that he's going to be able to do that. And I've seen a lot of talk, right? The popular thing about the Jets was, well, the last 2 years, they've won 7 games, right? They just get a competent quarterback in there. They don't need even a superstar. They can win games. Well, as you said and articulated, not when that defense is getting shredded. They allowed the Niners, Bright, to score on 8 straight drives in this game. I mean, that's horrific. It's putrid. That's the worst that you can possibly be. And I think all I was thinking as the night was going on was, man, they better get on the phone with Hassan Reddick. That number is going up. They better get this man in because it's going to take him a couple games, 2-3 games to get in game shape regardless. They need a pass rush. They need the energy. They need the help. And I don't know what's going on in Joe Douglas's office, but they better figure it out soon.
Yeah, and there's, to this point, are like no whispers that anything is even close, that they're having any kind of contact. So who knows how long that's going to be. I perfectly agree with your concerns on the mobility. That has always been a big part of his game. You go back to his heyday with the Packers. As good as he is throwing the ball from the pocket, part of his greatness is being able to move in the pocket, move to his left, move to his right, throw on the run, and even the occasional scramble was always in his arsenal in Green Bay. And those kind of things are not going to be part of his game when you're coming off an Achilles injury at his age. So, I mean, the expectations are too high on him. They're too high on the team. And it's always a dangerous game to play when you say you're only one player away. Because where did we hear that? It was the Denver Broncos. They thought they were just a quarterback away. They made the trade, gave up a king's ransom for Russell Wilson. It blew up in their face.
Yep.
You have to have a cohesive team, both sides of the ball. And it's like, yeah, last year the Jets defense played great, but this year it might not be as good, and the team could go south as a result. And that's what happens when you just don't have a stable franchise, starting from the ownership on down to the coach. And that's where we've been for our whole lives as football fans.
Yeah, it's about culture, right? I think that's what you're talking about. It's about the culture of the team. And let's just quickly, and I know Jeff fans and anyone else like Dylan, if he's hearing this right now, let's look at the Patriots. The Patriots are not going to be a good team, right? We'll talk about them when we get to picks. We know that. But they won a game on Sunday in Cincinnati. And what do they have, Bri, under a new head coach in Gerard Mayo? An identity. There's a culture there. They're even given that slogan, take them to the hill. I don't know if you saw that. But that's the slogan that's going on because in practice, they were all running up hills or things like that. And they were talking about that they're going to outwork and be more, they're not going to be as tired. They're going to have more perseverance. They're going to have more strength late in games. They're going to do that to teams. And they were saying that on the sidelines in Cincinnati. Hey, we got this team right where we want them. Let's take them to the hill. They already have a slogan, just like do your job when they had it under Belichick. There's a culture there, even in the first game of Mayo's tenure. What is Saleh's culture? I mean, what's going on there? We very much saw last year, he feels like he's a puppet of Aaron Rodgers, a puppet of the front office and Joe Douglas. It's just like, it was weird. We talked about last year, the questions that he would have in these press conferences. Are you making this decision? He's very coy with what he's going to say. It just seems like he's just there. And his hallmark in San Francisco was defense. It was supposed to be here with the Jets. They've had good defenses under his tenure. Where was it on Monday night? Nowhere to be found.
Well, and that's the thing, is a lot of these great coordinators, they're specialists. And once they get into the seat of being a head coach, they don't have control over the whole operation. And he looks like he's going to fall to that trap. He just doesn't look like he's going to be the answer long term. I mean, all you have to do is look at the win-loss record. It's not good at all. The problem is, you don't really have a choice, because if you fire him mid-season, you basically go to Nathaniel Hackett, as you pointed out before, and that's not an answer either. So you got to ride it out and hope basically that you get everyone on the same page and that you can try to take a swing at it. But game in doesn't look promising.
Yeah, this season is what it is. You can't be firing anyone mid-season, like especially the head coach. What you came into the season with, this is what you got. You can't rely on Devontae Adams walking in the door or anybody else. Try to get Reddick in the door and figure it out as a franchise. You got a lot of easier games coming up. If you want to be a playoff team, you got to start winning the easy ones. So we'll see what happens. But overall, I know we talk mostly Jets there. There's really nothing for me to talk about the Niners, right? Kyle Shanahan's offense, they are what they are. They know McCaffrey. They bring in Mason. The guy's great, right? He's the best run game designer in pro football, bar none. There's no question there. I thought Brock played a really good night. I thought Debo was really good. Clearly, Ayuk was rusty. I mean, we all saw that. They are what they are. The defense is good. I expect them to be one of the top teams in the league. This is why on the prediction show and even week one, I said this hyperbole going on in this offseason. People are bored during the summer. Talking about the Niners, might not make the playoffs. There's too much noise. Super Bowl hangover. Not with this team. We've seen what they've done for the last 5 years. We know what they are. This is going to be a great team. We know it. You know it. Everybody knows it. Stop deluding yourselves and thinking that this team's not going to win the division. It's ridiculous. I just don't want to hear it anymore. Right, let's go to the week 2 games. Let's switch over. I enjoyed that discussion, but we are a little bit limited on time. We're still giving a good one here. So let's switch over to tonight's game. Bills, Dolphins, Thursday night, the first game on Amazon Prime. If you're watching out there, fortunately, you need a Prime subscription, at least legally. We'll see these two teams taking place. For me, Brian, this game all comes down to the Dolphins, right? The Bills almost lost last week. The Dolphins almost lost last week in games that they should have won. Allen coming into this game banged up. But the Dolphins, too, is like something like 1-5 or 1-6 against Buffalo all time. He's horrific. I mean, he's terrible. This is a much-needed game in Miami in September, in that heat in week 2. We know that they could have won this division last year. All they had to do was beat Buffalo, and they lost. They need this game more than the Buffalo Bills do. Everything's on the line. All the stuff that's gone on with Tyreek Hill before the game last week. There's been a lot of emotions going on, a lot of talk around this team. I know they're going to be without Mostert tonight. It looks like Achane is going to play, but he's a little banged up. This is a game the Dolphins need, and against my better judgment, I am taking the Miami Dolphins. I think that it just means more to them. I think in this week in Miami, they have to win it. I understand it's an easy, if you want to pick the underdog, easily can pick the Buffalo Bills here. Last I looked, the spread was like something like 2.5, 3.5. I think it was 3.5. Easily take the Buffalo Bills. You have all the history there, but against my better judgment, I'm taking Miami to win this game.
I'm seeing 2.5 as of now, so it tells you they expect it to be a very competitive game. Divisional matchup. These games typically close, even if the Dolphins usually are on the short side. But I'm with you. I'm taking Miami at home to get the weapons all going. We saw it, Hill, in the aftermath after all he went through before the game yesterday, really answered the bell and had that game-changing play after a slow start from Miami, as he so often does. See, the Bills, good as they may be, and I think Josh Allen's going to have a huge season even without Diggs, they don't have that guy like Hill or Waddle in that receiving group. I think it's going to be too much to overcome. Big plays in the Miami passing game. I think it's a big game for Achan too. We've seen when he gets his opportunity to be the lead back, he typically produces. I think he will. I think the Dolphins have the edge.
I'm hoping they use a little bit of Jeff Wilson in there too, because I had to start him in fantasy with the Mostert injury, so we'll see what happens. Also, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about a quick note on the whole Tyreek situation. There, we're not that kind of channel. I understand that, but I definitely think it was, it was over the top. I won't go as far as to say abhorrent, but it was over the top. We've seen these situations many times in the United States. It's not too surprising, unfortunately. Of course, yes, I acknowledge we know Tyreek's history. We know things that have been against him, things he's been charged with, or alleged things that have happened to him. I understand all that. He might not be your favorite person in the world, but star player or not, no one deserved to be treated the way that they did in that manner. It was extremely over the top. We see that what happened with those police officers being put on administrative leave. And to boot, right before literally driving to the game. Tyreek, he broke the law. He should have been held accountable, but not in the ways that he was. That should have been a driving violation, a ticket, a fine, maybe points on his license. Not something, I'm not a court, I'm not here to say that. But to do what he did and to be put on the blacktop like that, I think I'd be remiss of not mentioning that. I thought that was ridiculous and something, unfortunately, Bri, that we've seen far too much in this country.
Yeah, no doubt. And of course, when you see the video evidence come out and you can watch exactly what unfolded, it really tells you everything you need to know. I mean, it's far beyond what needed to be done there. And I'll just say I'm happy for Tyreek that he had a couple of his teammates come to
Calais
his
Campbell.
aid during the situation. That Calais Campbell and Jonnu Smith were both there to kind of help him, whereas if he had nobody, who knows if he would have even been able to make it to the stadium and
Right.
play in that game. So fortunately, it was able to work out where he, got through it and got on the field and ended up playing like a superstar self. But yeah, you never want to see anything like that transpire.
Yeah, of course, here, ladies and gentlemen, we talk football. We're a football podcast, but, we're human beings. And when things like this affect the game and they're big stories, I think we can't shy away from that. There's a right to talk about it, and I think even in our brief words there, both of our feelings on that situation. And I'm glad in the end, even though there's some hurt feelings and some embarrassment, and there's all these things you could be angry about, I'm glad that everyone was safe and it worked out where it could have been a lot worse of a situation. Brian, let's turn to some happier news. We'll switch over to the Sunday 1:00 games, and this starts off with a game we don't really need to talk about: the Raiders and the Ravens. I'm picking the Ravens. They're going to bounce back. They're going to win this game. The Raiders, we know what they are. They're going to be a top 5 draft pick team. They showed a little bit of fight against the Chargers, who I also don't think are a great team, but Ravens are going to romp in Baltimore. Give me them all the way.
Yeah, it's the home opener. It looks like it's the prime spot where you have a little bit of a letdown week one, and you go home, you take your frustrations out of a much lesser opponent. It just looks like a spot where the Ravens are going to roll behind Lamar Jackson, and I would certainly expect that to be the case.
Chargers go to the Panthers, and God almighty, Bri. I was talking about this weekend when we got together and watched football. I said the NFL might have to start considering the English Premier League. Pete, what do you mean by that? In the English Premier League, you can relegate teams to leagues below. The NFL might need to start kicking the Panthers to the XFL, because this team is so miles in my mind below every other NFL team, even the Raiders or the New York Giants. I mean, we're going on 2 to 3 seasons out of just an abhorrent, horrific team. And I don't see a way out, Bri. I mean, they have one of the wealthiest owners in the sport in David Tepper, so it's not like money's a problem. They have a beautiful stadium there in North Carolina, in Charlotte. What is the issue? You got a new coaching staff, you got everything, and they cannot figure out getting trounced by the Saints, who we also do not think is going to be a very good team this year. I'm taking the Chargers all the way in this game. Jim Harbaugh gets a win in his debut. exactly as I predicted, exactly as everybody predicted. Ground and pound. We saw what J.K. Dobbins, what we all believe when he's healthy, can be. He's going to be a huge popular waiver wire pick this week if he isn't already. But I have no respect for the Panthers. And the way this season's going, Bri, this could go south real quick on Dave Canal and the Panthers, and they could be looking at another quarterback come next season. So give me the Chargers all the way.
Yeah, certainly possible. I mean, we thought that game last week, we're like, we didn't really think of either team, the Panthers or the Saints. We figured the Saints are a little better, they'll win. Not that it would be 47-10,
I mean, what are we
and
doing?
Carr's slinging the ball all over the yard. I mean, it was just flat out ugly. I'm with you all the way. I mean, after watching the Panthers, there was nobody in their right mind who could come back and say they're going to play a competitive game here against the Chargers, who under Harbaugh, I think are going to be a bit changed. You know, he's a guy that wherever he goes, he seems to get the most out of his teams. 49ers, he didn't win it all, but man, were those teams good year in and year out. Then he wins it all there with Michigan. The Chargers are going to be tough to play against for a lot of this season. I think they're going to get the win here against a hapless team to go to 2-0.
Yeah, they're not going to be a great team this year. We've talked about that, but I feel like we're finally going to be able to get rid of the Chargers are going to Charger on this show. I feel like he can kind of weed that out of really the culture that's there in Los Angeles. The Saints that we just mentioned visit the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys, what an impressive performance week one. A team that I feel like we are both very down on. I did not even have them making the playoffs. Absolutely annihilated the Browns in Cleveland. They're going to win this game against the Saints. The Saints being a little bit overvalued in the betting lines. They played the Panthers. Let's relax and pump the brakes there. Dallas at home. We know what they've been the last few years, especially under Mike McCarthy. Give me Dallas all the way. Probably at least a 10-point game.
Yeah, I like the Cowboys as well, and I mean, we shouldn't bury the lead here. The fact that they got the deal done with Dak Prescott just before kickoff in the game last week, to me, that changed the whole feel of this season. Because one of the reasons why I was down on this team is just because I felt like they didn't know what they were doing contractually with a lot of these big players, and they basically were just looking at this season as one to get rid of and make changes afterwards. But maybe they've got their best chance to make some noise that they have now. It always comes down to what will they do in the playoffs. We got a long way to get to that point, and after one game, this looks like a team that is going to be a lot better than you and I thought going in. I mean, they had it all working. The defense with Mike Zimmer as the new coordinator got after the Browns. Dak did what he needed to do. CeeDee Lamb, they got signed and on the field. So, I mean, it was an A-plus performance for the Cowboys in week one. I think they deliver another good win at home and go to 2-0 with another win.
Yeah, 4 years, $260 million, $231 million guaranteed.
A lot of money.
Yeah, we talked last week, even Calibro when he was on, about is Dak going to be playing for the Giants next season? Is this going to be the last year in Dallas? The one thing I will say, they get the deal done, hats off to them. The Dallas Cowboys, and we'll talk more about this as the season goes on and even into the coming years that we do this podcast, I hope, they are very bad at negotiations. They're just terrible. Like, we all knew it. They did it with Zeke. They did it with Dak the first time. We knew that they were going to cave, at least with CD, and Dak didn't surprise me in the slightest. You're going to pay these guys. Why did you not pay these guys before the price went up earlier in the offseason? It just makes no sense. Yeah. And in really not even the cap, really Jerry Jones's pocket, they're paying the price for how much more money that they had to pay these guys. So, but hey, picking them to win this game, hats off to them for week one as well. The Bucs and the Lions, and I think a really interesting matchup, and it's funny enough, the way this worked out for the Lions, playing both the teams in the Rams and the Bucs that they played in the first two rounds of the playoffs last year. Very fascinating there. Got a lot of interesting matchups going on in this week. I think the Lions in Detroit, they're going to shake off some of the rust that they had last week. I think they're going to look a lot better. I think this game is also going to be better, even in the Rams-Lions game there. I really love what I saw in the Bucs last week. But give me the Lions. I think they're going to win this one in Detroit. Go 2-0.
Yeah, I'm going Lions. I think the game's going to be very close.
Yeah.
I would pick Tampa with the points. I think this might come down to a field goal. As down as I was on the Bucks, this team doesn't look like it's going away. I mean, Baker Mayfield, so much was said, oh, he'll regress after a good season last year. Well, he slung it around. It might not have been against a great defense, Washington, but he's a guy who looks like he has found a home there. We know the talent has never been a question. He's a former number one overall pick. I think they're going to be a pesky team throughout this season, and they're going to give the Lions all they can handle. In the end, though, I think Detroit comes out on top, but I think it's a field goal game.
They better be careful, the Atlanta Falcons, and I'm talking to them right here. You keep playing like you did. And
not a good start.
We'll get to them in a second. You keep playing like you did, this Bucs team's going to easily win this division. Watch out. The Colts go to the Packers, and of course the big storyline here coming off the Brazil game on Friday night that ended up happening over on the streaming service Peacock. Unfortunately, right, the game's pretty much in hand. We all know it. The Eagles win 34-29 and kind of trying to throw a Hail Mary at the end of the game. Jordan Love kind of gets rolled up on a little bit. His knee pops out of place and he gets hurt. You never want to see a guy get hurt. You especially do not want to see a guy get hurt on a play like that where the game is pretty decided. The statistics all show you got like a 99% chance of losing that game. You're not going to win that game. And to see him get hurt there, now thankfully he avoids a major injury. Looks like he's going to be out. They didn't even put him on IR, so anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks that they're saying there with his knee. I believe they said it was an MCL sprain, I think is kind of what they settled on there. They said the ACL was intact, but they're going to be without him in this game. It looks like Malik Willis is going to be getting the start, who just recently signed with the team like 2 weeks ago. Not a great spot for the Packers. Give me the Colts. I really liked what I seen at Indianapolis. They lose against the Texans week 1. Andy Richardson's a little bit hit and miss with his accuracy, but man, that throw he threw, man, off his back foot for like 61 yards while he's slipping. The talent's there. I saw it at Florida. I know it's there, and I think the Colts are going to get into the win column against kind of a Packers team that's a little bit reeling. Give me the Colts.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I bet you expect me to take Indianapolis because of my lesser feelings on the season coming into the Packers, but I am actually going with Green Bay. I think at home, Lambeau Field, the home opener, place is going to be all juiced up. Richardson, as impressive as the arm talent is at times, he also at times can get some interceptions, so I think this might be a game where he gets a little loose with the ball, and the Packers playing a very conservative style offense, lean on the running game. Jacobs didn't have a great first game as a Packer, but he started to get into a feel for the game in the second half, broke off some decent runs. I think they rely on him heavily. Even if Willis does suit up, which I don't know if Love has been ruled out, because I saw he actually was practicing this week, but we can check on that.
Check on it. I thought he was definitely out this week. Let's see.
But even if it is Willis starting, I think they have enough playmakers to do some damage and get the win in their home opener. I don't love the Packers this year, but in this spot, I'm taking them to pull out a close game.
Yeah, Matt LaFleur said today, 3 hours ago, he has a chance out there. They're considering him day to day. Those are one of those situations that when I read stuff like that, I don't believe that. I just think, especially at least for one game, you're not taking your franchise quarterback that you just gave all this money to for a game against the Colts. Even if you're 0-2, it's not the end of the world. I think risking him out there where he could really get teed off on by this Colts pass rush, I think that's dangerous. I think you're really opening him up to potentially having a worse injury. So they could say all they want. I just do not think in any way that he is going out there this week, in my mind. But hey, maybe I'm proven wrong. Maybe it works out for them. But, if you get Jordan Love, who's clearly not going to be at 100%, if he's at 60%, is that really worth it? I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know if I would risk that. But we'll see what happens. Browns go to the Jags. These two teams lose in different fashions. The Browns, of course, getting blown out by the Cowboys, and the Jags losing a game that they seem like they always lose, that they're leading. They're about to score another touchdown with Travis Etienne. A great play, I believe it was by Holland to the Dolphins, punches it out on the goal line, and the whole game turns from there. Tyreek goes for an 80-yard touchdown, and the Jags lose again. I am taking the Jags. I have said before I'm a Trevor Lawrence believer, but man, every week it's getting a little bit harder. He loses this one to this coming week. I believe it's 7 losses in a row dating back to last season. I believe he'll be 0-7, I think it'll be, or 0-8, somewhere around there. They need to win this game. I think the Browns are a mess. That Deshaun Watson stuff, even off the field, is getting uglier by the day. Probably, I think it's safe to say, the worst trade in NFL history, maybe in all of sports history. But we don't need to talk about that here. Give me the Jags to win this one.
I'm taking the Jags too, and even as someone who is not particularly high on Trevor Lawrence, like in this particular quarterback matchup, after what you saw from Watson last week, who just was overwhelmed against the Cowboys, and then as you point out, the off the field stuff on top of it, he's becoming more and more unforgivable with all of these situations that keep arising. I like Lawrence and the Jags to get the bounce back. If not, it doesn't look like this is going to be a season that the Jags can make noise, but I have to believe on their home field they get it done.
Yeah, we can talk about it more as the season goes on. We're not going to waste time here with it, but the Deshaun stuff, he's an uncuttable player right now. He is, because the cap hit would be something we've never seen in NFL history. I mean, it'd be somewhere close to like $170 million. I mean, something that's just, it's unattainable to field a team if you did something like that. So they're stuck in this situation. They got to figure it out. The Niners will visit the Vikings, and hey, shout out to Sam Darnold coming back a little bit last week. Yes, it was against the lowly Giants, but he still looked pretty good out there. He was 12 for 12 at one point, but you're playing the San Francisco 49ers. We know what this team is. Sam Darnold was just in their building, so it's not like Kyle Shanahan hasn't seen him in a while. He just recently saw him last year. I think the Niners are going to bring the Vikings fans a little bit back down to earth this week. Give me the Niners.
Yeah, we're in agreement there. I mean, you know me, I'm higher on the Vikings than most, so I felt pretty good watching them just embarrass the Giants in week 1, and Darnold going out there and like you said, with the perfect start to his first 12 passes. I mean, he was really playing good football, but now you get into, one of the classes of the NFC coming into your building, and it's going to be tough sledding, I think. Now, these teams met last year. I think the Vikings may have actually won the game. It was a close game last year when they played.
One of Kirk Cousins' last games.
Yeah, on Monday Night Football. But the 49ers, to me, feel like they're going to get off to a similar start as they did last year when they were like 5 or 6-0 and they were just running roughshod through people. They're hot right now after their week 1 triumph. I think it continues here in week 2.
The Seattle Seahawks go across country and visit the New England Patriots, who won a game. How about that for the Patriots, hosting the Seahawks here in Foxborough? The Seahawks, I didn't think were overly impressive in week 1. I know some people had a different perspective of that. Me watching almost all of that game, I wasn't super impressed. I thought Geno, for the most part, was off. I know some people said, oh, he got it going toward the end. I'm like, I don't think you were watching the game. You were just looking at the stat boxes. He was all over the place. The team almost had 3 safeties. The Seahawks almost got tackled in the end zone 3 times in this game. They did get tackled twice. I've never seen anything like that. And, Bo Nix in his first start up against the 12th man. We both picked Seattle. I think Calibro did as well. We knew where that was going to go. But here in Foxborough, I'm not getting high on the Patriots supply. I'm not, man. I am taking the Seahawks in this game. I think they're going to win it, even though I wasn't overly impressed. But hell, man, the Patriots win this game and they go 2-0. I don't know what we're going to be talking about next week, but we'll definitely be talking about them. So give me the Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not high on the Patriots, but I'm picking them to win this game. I think they're getting off to a 2-0 start. I think the new coach, Gerard Mayo, has really injected some life into this team. I think with Jacoby Brissett, they have a stable veteran presence at quarterback that won't make the killer mistake. They can run the ball decently, play efficient enough defense that they can stay competitive in some games, I think. I see them getting off to a 2-0 start here against a Seahawks team that be, I think, kind of hit or miss.
If he stays healthy, cornerback of the Patriots, Christian Gonzalez, you're going to be talking about him as a top 2 or 3 corner by the end of the season. That guy is awesome. The Jets visit the Titans, Brian. The Jets, God, they need a bounce-back game against a team of the Titans who blew a game last week, up 17 points against the Chicago Bears, and what has become maybe one of the memes of the internet this week, and Will Levis dropping to his knees after his horrific interception that resulted in a pick 6. Also, the Bears tacked on a special teams touchdown in that game. I'm taking the Jets. I mean, the Jets have to win this game if they want to be taken seriously and really, even in week 2, stay viable for the playoffs. You cannot be losing to the Titans, even if you're on the road. Give me the Jets to bounce back in this one.
Yeah, I'm not exactly confident, but I feel like I can't go against them in this game because if I'm going against them in this game, I'm going to be going against them a lot throughout the year. So I have to feel like they find a way to pull this one out. It's not going to be easy. I think
No.
it'll be a close game. And like I said, I'm not confident after watching them in week 1. But to me, you really just got to lean on Breece Hall. He's got to be the guy in this game, be the bell cow running back, take the pressure off Rodgers, continue to let him get healthier week after week. To me, it has to be about Hall, and it has to be about the defense playing a more physical, more complete game. If they do those things, I think that's the formula to pull one out.
Yeah, Rodgers got to watch out for Jeffrey Simmons, one of the best defensive players in the NFL. He's going to be facing that this week, and I think we saw last week he sometimes has some trust issues. He only really threw to Hall, Lazard, and Wilson. Got to start spreading that ball around going into week 2. The Giants.
Mike Williams, where you at?
Exactly, yeah. Mike Williams was dressed but not playing. He was in and out of the game, barely played. It was nice to get an Alan Lazar sighting, but yeah, Williams has got to be there. The Giants playing the Commanders and might be one of the worst games of the weekend. Historically, the Giants dominate the Commanders, but at home, I'm taking the Commanders. I mean, I don't even feel good about this. I think both of these teams are very bad. I think at least the Commanders, with their rookie QB, have a little bit of upside. The Giants are cooked, as you said at the start of the show. Their season's already over. Giants fans, WFAN, everybody knows it. The season is over. Anyone that had hope, they know it. In a close, ugly game, give me the Commanders here at home.
Yeah, I think the difference is you at least have a young up-and-comer at quarterback who even in the loss flashed his talent in that game against Tampa, running the ball, throwing it, and on the Giants side you just have a beleaguered, I think is the word that describes it, quarterback and offense and team and coaching staff and organization. I mean, the list goes on and on. That performance against the Vikings on a scale of 0 to 10, a half might be generous. I mean, it was that bad. From the quarterback to the defense having breakdowns all over the place, no semblance of a running game. I mean, that was just a brutal watch from start to finish. And it doesn't look like they have issues that are fixable. So, yes, this is a game against a team that they typically handle that maybe they can win, but I'm going Washington. I was higher on them than most, picking them as a surprise playoff team. Already not feeling very good about that, but I got to believe they'll be able to beat the lowly Giants in this one.
Yeah, also not great vibes going on in the New York locker room. I mean, once again, we're talking about Kayvon Thibodeau, another Giants player we're talking about with the fans. I saw some questions and people talking about in media of like, oh, well, that was a low-hanging fruit question. Ask about the fans booing. I don't think it is. The only reason that you are there and paid the money you are as a player, we talked about this last season with Evan Neal, is because of those fans. You owe it to them, and not answering questions like that. And I've never liked, Kayvon Thibodeau's attitude since he has come into the league. He really wants to put himself in that upper echelon of pass rusher when he's earned nothing. I just thought that was a really poor kind of press conference that he typically gives. It's not a one-time thing, and the vibes going on with all those players. It seems like Daboll does not have a great handle on what is going on there, and that team's going to get dismantled by the end of the season. You watch. The 4 or 5 games kick off with the Rams and the Cardinals. I'm taking the Rams in this one begrudgingly because I think the Cardinals offense, we saw some great things out of them in Buffalo. I know Buffalo's defense is not all worldly, but I said before the season started that they are going to be a fun watch, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and the Rams are beat up as hell. But I'm trying to go with the history here. Sean McVay has only lost in regular season and playoffs included 1 game to the Arizona Cardinals ever, and that was in LA a couple of years ago where the Cardinals went in there and then made a big to-do about how great that they thought they were. I think the Rams, they get back on track here. They understand the importance of this game. Seeing the San Francisco 49ers next week, you're most likely, I'm not jumping ahead, but you're most likely losing to that team. They never beat the Niners. You start off 0-3, the season's over. You need to win this game. You have to go to Arizona, win it. Does not matter who is on the field. Figure it out, McVay. If you're the better coach, you're the more experienced coach. I'm taking the Rams.
I'm going Rams too. It was interesting with the Cardinals that Kyler played a good game in week one, but Marvin Harrison Jr.,
Yeah.
we're looking for you. Can't find you. One catch for 4 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not
Wide
the
open on the
debut
last
that
play.
anyone.
Did you see that? He was wide open right at the end of the game. Could have been the game-winning touchdown. Kyler just didn't see him.
Hopefully, for his sake, it was just kind of a first game of a career jitters because you certainly hope you get a number one receiver when you draft a guy that high as they did. I think they'll put up their share of points, but I think the Rams too much firepower if they can keep Stafford upright. I think it's another big game for Cup. Maybe not 14 catches, but I think he gets another 10 in this game, and they do enough to get the win.
And despite whoever is out there on the offensive line, we know the Rams have made a lot of free agent moves this week, as you would expect, to get some depth. Get back to the run game, pound the ball inside with Kyron, and hey, can we get a Blake Corum side in who did not play a single snap last week? Be nice to see them do a little ground and pound while that kind of passing attack is a little bit vulnerable. The Steelers and the Broncos kicks off at the 4:25 game. A game where, I saw some things I liked out of Bo Nix. It was interesting. Saw some things I didn't like. He's a rookie playing in Seattle. I mean, it makes sense of what you were going to get there. And then the Steelers, in a win, the only team to win in the AFC North in week one, sure. You kick 6 field goals, Steelers fans. Like, let's pump the brakes on what we saw out there. Your defense was great, as they usually are solid. Watt is great when he's healthy. We know that, but it's a ticking time bomb usually on his injury, on what that defense is able to stay healthy for, and the offense just didn't look great. Let's just be real. You're kicking 6 field goals. I'm not impressed. I think the Denver is going to bounce back in this game in Mile High. I think they're going to get in the win column. I think it's going to be another ugly 19-13 kind of low-scoring game, but give me the Broncos.
I'm with you there. I actually thought you were going to take Pittsburgh and we were going to be kind of contrarian picks here, but no, I'm on Denver. I mean, for Pittsburgh, it would be big if they got a win here and started 2-0 with 2 road victories. Would be really big. But I think the teams are both kind of mediocre. That it's more likely they both get out of here 1-1. Denver, tough place to play. Steelers are riding with Justin Fields, which I think is the right call. I don't know what Russell Wilson's future holds in a Steelers uniform. I think they saw enough out of Fields that they stick with him. Pickens had a decent game receiving the ball. I agree with you. Like, it's a low-scoring game. Defenses dominate, but I think Knicks makes one big play, and the Broncos at home in front of their home fans pull it out.
Yeah, they said Wilson is still injured, I guess, and they're taking it day to day, week to week. But as it goes on, like, how much do I believe of that? And they keep winning, they're going to stick with Fields. It's how the league works. Brian, the hyped up game of the week that maybe shouldn't be hyped up these days is the 4:25 game in the Bengals and the Chiefs. I mean, these are rivals that we've seen over the last few years. Really, Joe Burrow, the only quarterback in the AFC to consistently beat Mahomes. He's 3-1 against him in his career, including regular season and playoffs. But, Brian, I'm taking the Chiefs here. I think the Bengals, I understand, they start off slow in September. Losing to the Patriots at home was catastrophic. Their schedule's only going to get harder. You saw Burrow again. We got to look at this stuff. Working out his wrist on the sideline, working out his wrist on the field. I know there was some Twitter doctors out there talking about, that's just normal. He's working out scar tissue. Maybe. We've never seen a QB have this type of injury. We've seen that. We've seen actual doctors talk about that during the offseason. You have no T. Higgins probably again this week. We know Jamar is unhappy. The team just does not coalesce early on, and they cannot keep starting 0-2 or worse and making the playoffs. They didn't make it last year. Of course, they were injured down the stretch. They are in dire straits here, Bri, and we need to start having a conversation if they lose this game. I don't care if it's in the cheese, about Joe Burrow. I hate to say it, I love Joe Shiesty, but we got to start talking about, was this guy a one-year wonder? I know that's crazy to say, but he's a very injury prone. We've seen what he is on the field. We can't just go, last year he had four-game stretch where he was arguably the best quarterback in the league. That's what we're holding on to. The guy can't stay on the field, and he's not playing well. We cannot keep giving him a pass that we would not give anybody else. Give me the Chiefs to win this one.
I think Burrow will be okay in the long run. I'm not as worried from the quarterback standpoint. And as you said, the Bengals kind of had the Chiefs number, which is why this game is only a 5.5 point spread. Otherwise, it would probably be like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But I like Chiefs all the way, too. I think they win this game by double figures. The situation with Cincinnati, as you point out, it's not good right now. Now, I think it will get better, but they just have a habit of starting off slow, and the issues with not having the full complement of weapons out there. T. Higgins probably out again, as you said. Didn't get much going offensively in the game against New England. I think the Chiefs win by 10 plus points this game. I really do.
Yeah, and the Bengals and Joe Burrow, you want to prove me wrong? This is a huge statement win if you can go out and pull off this upset in Arrowhead, or, as you guys used to call it once upon a time, Burrowhead. The Sunday night game is the Bears and the Texans, two teams that we could see what the NFL was doing on this schedule. The Texans, second-year C.J. Stroud, very popular Super Bowl pick, and then the Bears, all the hype has been behind the Bears, of course, and they're playing here in Houston. I'm going to take the Texans. I just think they're a more talented, complete team. We know the Bears should have lost last week. If the Titans didn't implode, the Bears did not play well. Caleb Williams in his debut, let's just be real. He was terrible. He was awful. 93 yards, looked like he was lost out there. They had nothing going. And I think Houston, a full complement of pieces. We know what they can be. We saw a taste of that last week against a good divisional opponent in the Colts. Give me the Texans all the way.
Yeah, well, I'll just say I feel better about not buying into the hype with the Bears as much after their Week 1 performance. Though, they pulled out a win, and a win is a win, but it was not a good performance. I mean, when you have the rookie sensation that you hope to be quarterback go out there and have that kind of performance under 100 yards in the NFL is hard to believe. You almost never see that unless it's like, jet quarterbacks from years ago. But in this game, I'm taking the Texans. I think with their high volume of weapons, we saw it on display, an impressive win against the Colts. Mixon has added a lot to that backfield. They got three really supreme wide receivers. I was a little worried about maybe a sophomore slump for Stroud, but maybe not. This team might just be too talented. So I think the Texans win again.
And finally, Bri, the Monday night game is a game and a matchup of birds. It's the Falcons and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles welcoming the Falcons into Lincoln Financial Field. And I understand. Listen, the Eagles win in Brazil, right? It was messy. Jalen Hurts, 3 turnovers. Okay, they couldn't get, with Jurgens being the new center, with Jason Kelce retiring, didn't look great. Snaps weren't amazing. The defense, a lot to be desired throughout that game for the most part, besides Mitchell, who I actually thought played well in the secondary. But I get it. And then you have the Falcons, who I think we all thought, should be a pretty winnable game at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Were terrible. And we have to start wondering about another older quarterback in Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles injury. Is he washed? We'll have to pay attention to that. Give me the Eagles all the way. We know what Kirk is in prime time. There's no reason that we should continually keep fooling ourselves. And I'll even speak for me. Me fooling myself and believing that the Atlanta Falcons are going to be anything but what they have been for the last 20 years, or really, I'll even say what they've been since Matt Ryan was in his prime and has left this team. So I'll even say 10 years. I won't discount Matt Ryan like that. Give me the Eagles all the way. I think they'll get back on track in this game. There will not be turnovers the way that we've seen them in bunches in the last year and a half with them. And I think they're gonna roll in this game against Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, this offense right now might have the most firepower of any in the league. I mean, it can be scary good when you... Oh, incredible. I mean, 3 touchdowns, had over 100 yards rushing, was a factor in the receiving game as well. I mean, just everything that you could ask for in a signing. And we thought, like, that addition, running behind finally a quality offensive line, something he never had in his Giant years, would do wonders for him, and clearly it did. I mean, he looked refreshed, he looked brilliant. Sure. They've got just so many weapons out there for Jalen Hurts that even in the start of that game in Brazil, and what was a mess of a game where the field was a disaster, players are still falling all over the turf. It was not a good watch. But they overcame that and got the offense going, got some big plays. A.J. Brown made one for a big touchdown. So I think they do it again here now on the comfort of their home field, where hopefully they'll stay upright and not be slipping and falling. And the Falcons, there's just, like you said, there's questions right now of how good that offense will be. It was good first impression there on the Atlanta side, to say the least. I mean, I have to believe Cousins is going to play better than that. He better for the money that he's been paid. Otherwise, that fan base is going to start the Michael Penix chant sooner than later. But I think the Falcons will be okay in the long run, but in this game they're going to be outmatched by an Eagle team that just has too much firepower.
Yeah, they're lucky because they play in the NFC South, so even if they drop 0-2, they still have a chance of actually winning the division, maybe the worst division in football. But guys, that's going to do it here for First and 10 tonight. A lot of fun, really had a good time here. Brian, thank you so much for joining me as always. Gave all our week 2 picks there, talked about a little bit of the key games there, ended up being the primetime games from week 1, but of course there was many more games in week 1. If you wish to talk about them, please write down below. We love reading those comments. We'll talk to you and respond to you down there. We would appreciate that, and thanks so much for the support early on here, even in the season. It's so good to be back. I keep saying that, but it really is. I love football, man. It's just the perfect time of the year for the weather, for just the holidays going on, and just for football, for Brian and I to cut it up here for about an hour or so and some football here. Brian, any closing thoughts you have here tonight?
We got a game to watch that's starting in, 5 or 10 minutes. So we close out of here. We got some real football just as we did last week. We ended the show. We got the season started with that Ravens and Chiefs game. A little bit delayed because of the thunderstorm. Yeah. Hopefully we can get this one started on time and get week 2 going. Yeah, hopefully it's a great game. Of course, over on Amazon Prime, as almost every single Thursday night game will be now for the rest of the season. Go over there, check out Dolphins and the Bills. That could be a lot of fun. Huge divisional implications there. Guys, of course, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends if you be so kind. And we'll be back next week for week 3 here on First and 10. But until then, thank you for watching.